Hello and welcome to Pardon My Disruption. I am Alan Berkson, the Director of Community Outreach for Fresh Desk, and I'm joined, as always, by the Dr. Jonathan Yarmis, Dr. Disruptive. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, Alan.
We are broadcasting from beautiful downtown Stamford, Connecticut.
And
it is a beautiful day today.
Yeah, autumn is definitely in the air.
So this is, speaking of autumn, this is our October, how did you describe it? Our spooky, fiery edition. Oops. I guess it's working.
It's working.
Yeah, this is how you run technical technology.
Yes, we always have to verify that the audio is in fact going out over the air because we've had several versions for lip readers only.
Right, although it would be cool to come up with like bad lip reading for us. So we are here the second Friday of every month. Our next show will be, there's a caveat with that. That is post-election, so if the country is still standing, we will be here.
If we're still allowed to access the internet.
Wow. So, speaking of fiery, how's that? I'll just leave it at that.
Yes, we must be talking Samsung.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
How is that?
How is that possible?
How is that possible? When you're in a situation where you're sending flame retardant return packages to your customers, you know you have a problem.
Yeah. And not only when you have a recall and send out replacements, I mean, it's bad enough that it happened the first time. I can almost understand why that might happen because
the replacements.
Yeah, but the replacements are catching fire. This is one of those things that's apparently costing them billions, and deservedly so. But it's, you know.
Have there been any? Or it seems like they've been smoking and then they take it out of the pocket, throw it on the floor, and they're done.
Yeah, and you know, things, a little bit of smoke at altitude, but nothing that's caused.
Right.
And don't put it in your checked baggage, leaving it on. You know, the interesting thing, you know, and Samsung has perhaps some perverse loyalists different than Apple loyalists.
Okay.
Apple loyalists will put up with a lot of things. There's some Samsung loyalists who don't want to give their Note 7s back. You know, I mean, are you playing cell phone roulette? You know, it's happening as we approach winter in the Northern Hemisphere, so you get a multifunction device. It's a mobile phone and a portable heater.
Oh, but only one time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It depends on how much damage it's done. Most people don't turn it on a second time after, but it may be. This is one of those where it's not only how could this happen from an engineering perspective, but it's also a massive communications and customer foul up. Haven't done a great job of coordinating with regulators. They at first denied the scope of the problem. You know, to their credit, you know, they had a fairly quick and comprehensive remediation problem that was compounded by the fact that they remediated it with more problematic devices.
And I think I read they lost about $16 billion worth of market cap in a day.
Yeah, yeah, well deserved. But you know, the funny thing, compounded, there apparently have been some problems with some Samsung washing machines that spin too fast, and depending upon how they're loaded, the tops start popping off. So, you know,
but Samsung dryers are okay because they get hot anyway.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, but you know, this is one of those things where you wonder how they recover. And my sense is that they've got some brand loyalty because they've been continuing to innovate in a proper fashion. And while they didn't understand the scope of the problem, they responded quickly, comprehensively, and that buys them some goodwill. And it also points out, I think, a broader challenge about lithium-ion batteries. This has been a problem for a long time. And I guess, thankfully, we haven't seen this manifest itself too many other
laptops.
Yeah, and there was a plane that went down, I believe, in Florida, that was one of the first instances of the problem when a fire in the hold brought the plane down. So there's been a problem, a long-standing 10, 15 years. We love lithium-ion batteries because they solve some of the problems earlier batteries. They're high capacity, long life, and all of those kinds of things. But they are largely, unstable power supplies, and Samsung just happened to get caught. I really believe it could have been almost anybody. You wonder about the testing, but I imagine Samsung does as much testing as anyone. So I'm willing to give them a bit of a pass on this one.
Well, look, the lithium-ion battery, I think the most interesting characteristic is the fact that it doesn't weaken as the battery goes down. Meaning, if you have the old the NiCad batteries,
yeah,
they would get weaker and weaker as the battery. This
is a memory effect.
No, but as the
just,
percentage,
yes.
At 5%, if your battery's at 5%, you still have full functionality.
Yep.
Then it just dies. or bursts into flames. Yeah, either way. All right, speaking of phones, now's the portion where we have to play that nice sleepy music because it's a yawner.
No, as we surmised, last month we talked about the rumors about the Apple iPhone 7. And you always wonder, is Apple going to surprise us? Do they have something up their sleeves? And the answer, once again, is no. Yeah, no. The iPhone 7 came out, and it's incremental. It's got a good camera, but some good camera software. But the camera itself is, I mean, Samsung S7 stuff is comparable to it. Some have concluded better, some have concluded worse. We've got these new Google Pixel cameras that we may talk about in a little bit that arguably have a better camera. And as we surmise, the lack of a headphone jack has got everybody up in arms. But, the furor seems to have, largely abated.
But has the furor abated just because it's not been very well adopted, or that it's been accepted?
I'd say it's been accepted because, when you say not very well adopted, by Apple standards, what does not very well adopted mean?
They only sold 1 billion of them, yeah.
Yeah. We should all have such failures in our life. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I think people have, if you're going to remain in the Apple camp, you don't have a choice. Are you going to abandon Apple because of this? No. So, the fact that they did it now, as we said, the next go round next year with the 8 should be a more comprehensive refresh, and they got the bad news out of the way. So, good strategy. The hoopla about it, is going to get less and less over time, and Apple weathered the storm.
So tell me about, because this is, there's constant competition between the different phone vendors, but yet, using me as an example, the likelihood of me switching vendors is small, and it's not because of the quality of the product, but because of my investment in the ecosystem. Is there really a lot of people who switch often? I just don't know.
No, I mean, the short answer, you get some Android people who shift over to Apple. I don't think you see a lot going the other way. The challenge for Apple, and hence some of the lower end phones, has been, the telco industry is always referred to the next billion. And the next billion is a much more price-sensitive market. So new entrants coming into the market are predominantly Android, because you can...
So the competition is for the... Because, we talk about iPhone's camera is the iPhone 7 is marginally better or the same as the Galaxy. But it's not as if you're going to get someone to switch from an iPhone to it's more that new person who's the first adopter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the whole mobile industry in the States has become a zero-sum game. That there are not many net new customers, although it's interesting. Where's the growth coming from? I don't know if you saw it, but Verizon in the last month or two has announced some new cellular plans for IoT, Internet of Things devices. You want connectivity for your drone or for your camera or whatever, that you probably don't want to pay the same full price you do for a phone.
Right. There's also more predictable usage, so the carrier can say, I kind of know what that device is going to use. You're not going to be streaming video from your IoT, device or something.
Although, this will be an interesting one to see how it plays, because, I think anytime you say something is predictable,
somebody will figure out a way to hack it.
Yes.
And make it interesting.
Yes,
Yeah.
and oh, by the way, that's one of the security stories this month.
Right.
That hackers figured out a way cameras and so on participate in DD denial.
Before we get into security, as long as we're talking about phones and cameras, so I want to talk about the Google Pixel phone. I have an old old.
2 years?
It's a DSLR, so my daughter wanted to use it to do some vlogging, and it's with a V, not a vlogging, and your iPhone. And the quality that she's going to get from that camera is still better than her iPhone. Getting close.
Oh.
This whole concept used to be I carry around camera. Because I barely use it.
So this is an age-old thing in the technology industry that Microsoft always very well. Good. Their reaches of things are good enough, and I don't care how many new features you add. How many megapixels do you need in a picture?
Think if you ask a photographer, they'll say maybe 4.
Yeah.
Now here,
it depends on the size of the print.
No, but my wife took a picture. We were in California. She took a picture underneath Boardwalk, and it's just one of those classic. You can just imagine the picture. We blew it up to maybe 5 by 7 feet.
No pixelation.
No problem.
Well, yeah. That was because it was sand. The subject itself is pixelated.
But the bottom line is that for 99.9% of the use cases, for people who, they're not printing them out anymore. They're just looking at them on their phone.
On the screen, yes. As long as you can get screen resolution.
So when they tell me that they're coming out with a 15 megapixel, whatever, it's like, who cares about that?
Right. Which is also why the software that enables all sorts of interesting things these days, altering the point of view, capturing sound, capturing frames around the picture, because you always just missed that exact moment, and now you capture that moment.
Well, when you talk about good enough as a DSLR, I can capture action and I can stop it. I rarely get the right picture on my phone.
Right.
Rarely. When it's something happening fast and I miss it, but it doesn't make me carry my other camera around with me.
No. I mean, that's what just certain mindset things we old guys are still wrestling. I'm old enough to remember when you took pictures with film and it cost per device, so you actually cared about framing the precise shot. Although cameras made a comeback Sunday night.
Sunday night?
At the debate. No phones were allowed in the debate hall. They gave all the participants, disposable cameras.
Right.
Kids, ask your parents. Yeah.
Right.
We used to live with those things. Instamatics.
Ken Bone.
Yeah. For those of you who have forgotten who he is, his 15 minutes of fame has passed.
Well, his red sweater will live on.
Yeah, his red sweater and his Uber endorsement. The man parlayed an appearance on the, asking a question on the debate into sponsorship opportunity.
There you go.
More power to him.
So the Pixel phone, that's a play at saying the primary use case for your phone, other than as a phone, is as a camera.
Well, I wouldn't say as a phone. That's not the problem. The old joke. You mean it makes phone calls too? Yeah.
As a smartphone, it does all your other stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
But being able to take, and so Google's making a bet that taking a picture is more important to you than good enough. Is that what you're trying to, is that what?
Well, Google's trying to do a number of things here. One is control more of the ecosystem, because, I mean, this is always a challenge when you're a software platform. Do you compete with your OEMs? And it used to be verboten to do that.
Intel had that problem for how long?
Yes, and Microsoft had that problem.
Right.
For a long time, until the Surface tablet. And, slowly but surely, everybody's gotten away from this notion of I'm strictly a software platform and I won't compete with people to, the good news is there's no particular relevant hidden advantage. Because that challenges in the face, where they're keeping the goodies, the undocumented interfaces to themselves, so their favorite friends were just a little bit better. And the short answer is there's not a lot of secret, and whatever advantage it conveys is so minuscule as to be irrelevant. It was Ray Norda who back in the 80s coined the term coopetition.
Right.
That cross between competition and cooperation.
Was he the Novell guy?
Yeah, CEO of Novell.
Right.
Who
all the way back in my brain.
Yeah. He was my first CEO. I got into a shouting match in my analyst days a month or two at Gartner. When Microsoft introduced Land Manager. Yeah, but cooperative, because back then you were either a competitor or a partner, and then all of a sudden we started to get into these gray areas, and we've all learned to live with gray. You never hear anybody.
But let me go back to Google. Where has Google succeeded with the hardware business?
Nowhere particularly.
And yet they keep coming back.
Yeah, but I think when you look at this spate of announcements they had in the last month, it's a pretty significant bet they've made here. That this wasn't just a phone, but it was a phone. It was an Amazon Echo competitor. It was a virtual reality headset. It was Chromecast, and you might argue that Chromecast has been moderately successful as a hardware platform from Google.
Well, right, but like Chromebook doesn't count because that's been a OEM technology. Okay.
Yeah, but I think the answer is our notion of what constitutes a device is changing. Well,
but I also think this goes back to something you said back on our show probably more than a year ago, was when there was speculation as to what would Apple's next target be, and you said unequivocally the home.
Oh, yeah, I think I was talking about that was several years ago, and that it should be the home, but that their biggest failing was that this had all the hallmarks of a classic market for Apple to take over. Because Apple, for all we think of them as an innovator, is rarely first to market with something. They wait for the early attempts to fail miserably. There were other MP3 players. They learn and they come in, and with their software and design expertise, look at those early failures and say, I got this one. And right. they did it with music players. They did it with phones, and arguably did it with tablets. But the home has all of those hallmarks of a market where there have been failures, and there have been failures because, even if you're a computer expert, setting up a home network to integrate all your various devices requires expertise that no one human has.
And the funny thing was, a friend of mine he has his house set up with the lights so that when he gets home, the lights go on. Then he left and he turned off the lights with his family in the house. So it's little gotchas like that.
Yeah.
But you wrote down here, Google Home is an Echo competitor, but I love this. Still waiting for Apple.
Yes. No. And Siri is its play, but Siri A has shortcomings, and B, what I think the brilliance of Amazon with the Echo, and we'll see if Google can replicate it, is that this isn't a device in the classic sense of something I carry with me. It's something that's just there in the background. It's always available to me wherever I am.
It's that science fiction that you see in every futuristic home where there's the home talks back to you.
Yes, open the pod bay door, Hal.
Right.
You've got something there listening that responds as if it's an intelligent assistant.
Just don't name your kids Alexa.
Yes, or anything close, because I find I don't. Do you?
I don't have an Echo.
Oh, there are times when I'll be talking on the phone when all of a sudden I'll hear the Echo in the background going, "I don't understand what you just." It's like, you're not supposed to. Yeah, I didn't invoke your name. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it to go, could you say that a little louder, please? And this is one of those either scary things or exciting things. But I think Google is making a significant play here.
I have an entire page here of your Google announcements.
Yeah, I mean, it was a powerful set of things.
By the way, just to be clear, we are a tech show. I have my high-tech writing tool.
Yeah, so do I.
And,
but the funny thing when you say this high-tech writing tool, I am seriously such a digital user, user of technology, that I have lost my ability to write cursively.
Really?
I've lost the ability. I mean, literally, I will try and write things at times, and the hands won't move the way I want it. The handwriting comes out illegibly.
That might be just old age. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? But no. They're actually stopping. They're not teaching cursive anymore.
Yes. I understand that, but
but that's
the only thing I write in a given month, guaranteed to write, is my rent check, because my landlord won't take it electronically. And
well, my daughter was telling me the other day that if she needs to take notes or she wants to write an essay, she does it much faster on a computer than she would writing it.
Oh, certainly.
And
I sound like the Three Stooges. Certainly. Wise guy.
Okay. now.
But we digress. We'll have to do that kind of show. But but back to the Google announcements. Look at it.
Let's get through these quickly.
Once, they did a phone.
Yep.
And the timing of it's really good. If your Note 7's exploding, go and buy a Google phone, because it's the comparable high-end phone.
Right.
Great camera. A VR headset, again, competing directly with Samsung and at a relatively cheap price point.
Not as cheap as my New York Times.
No, cardboard.
Cardboard.
Yes, which gives you 60% of the experience, at least. Yeah. Good enough being the enemy better.
Yep.
Google Home, the Echo competitor, a new Chromecast capable of supporting 4K resolution for your big TV. Google Assistant across all of their devices, mobile phones. So you've got an integrative glue architecture on everything, responding to voices and learning about behaviors and so on across platforms. They've got a new Google Wi-Fi device that one of the neat problems it solves with a little bit of Google software. Those of us who live in places where a single wireless router doesn't give you complete coverage. And I'm in a relatively small apartment, and I've had to go install wireless repeater to get adequate coverage throughout the apartment. And the repeater experience is anything but seamless. That you're connecting to a differently named Wi-Fi spot in the apartment, and oftentimes you have to manually force the change because your device is clinging to the old one.
Right, and you can't move throughout your apartment and maintain your connection.
Right. So Google, a non-trivial price point. You can get cheap routers for $50, and they're I think 150 and up. That solves a real user problem. And so it's a comprehensive set of announcements, and I've been one who for a long time has said, Google's a one-trick pony, advertising. It's a damn good trick, but they were a one-trick pony, and everything they were doing was to feed the advertising beast. A lot of these things are still feeding the advertising beast, but we're getting beyond just feeding the advertiser into things that have real user value. So I think it's a noteworthy pivot from Google that says, generating advertising revenue through search and knowing more about consumers, we're asymptoting to knowing everything. And we've got to come up with new ways of delivering value, new value propositions. And they've made a significant foray into devices for consumers, the home, and even a newfound emphasis on the enterprise, with the rebranding of Google Apps and Google Docs into the G Suite. Right.
Which I'm a big fan, and actually G Suite is another example of good enough.
Yeah.
Is Google Docs better than Word? No, but it's good enough. Is Google Sheets better than Excel? No, but it's good enough.
Well, and I'll argue that maybe it is. It depends upon what you're trying to do.
But if
you're trying to do every bell and whistle in your standalone word processing document, Word is vastly better. If you are living in a collaborative work environment, all I've got to do, those of you who are sensitive and have worked with, one period of time, plug your ears for a couple of seconds.
Well, those of you
track changes.
Or those of you who have files named, contract doc 1 AB version 2 19, October 16th.
Yeah.
AB version 3 October 8th.
But just track changes. I've just with a client, I'm near finishing collaborative work on my former employer. What were you thinking? An 804-row spreadsheet. There are 5 of us working on it simultaneously. How would you do that in Excel? I mean, you'd spend more time on version control than you would on content creation and review. Right. And Microsoft will get there, but it started from the ground up with sharing multiple user environment in mind. And make no mistake about it, there are challenges and trade-offs. If we're both working on the same cell, what happens? Online, offline synchronization. This is non-trivial stuff.
One of the most impactful things about what's now called G Suite versus is LDAP, is the user maintenance and single sign-on. For Microsoft, it was on site, so and with the adoption of cloud, having single sign-on is huge.
Yes.
And that has probably led some of the adoption of G Suite particularly for new enterprises.
Yeah. That said, there are interesting challenges for those of us who maintain multiple personas. That's not a psychiatric statement. That is I've got my work identity, I've got my personal identity, and I've got a different work identity, and then I've got even some client identities.
And then you have this one, which is Dr. Disruptive.
Yes, yeah, multiple. And there are times when let's just say Google doesn't handle that as...
It does it much better now than it used to do.
Yeah.
Much better.
Well, that, because what it used to do is not do it at all.
But now it'll pop up and say, who do you want to do this as?
Yes, or at the very least, it will show you what you're doing it as.
And say, do you want to switch?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. There's still more user action and potential for mistake than I care for. And that's a whole other discussion.
But I want to get to first draft, because this, we always talk about
let's do that, just because
all right.
Eliminating a pet peeve of 18 years.
Okay, yeah. That's important.
Yes. Google is going, everybody...
Didn't you just get a divorce? No.
No, it took longer than that.
Right.
Yeah, but Google is going to punish those websites that have pop-up ads. Yay! I believe it was the X10 controllers, if you remember far enough back. A, what those were, and B, those were the guys that started with the pop-up ads. If they were not the first, they were certainly the most egregious offender.
Right. And
18 years later, Google is going to punish those people in search rankings. Thank you, Google. So the first draft.
First draft. This is pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, we
conceptually.
Yeah. Alan and I interact a fair amount on Twitter, and a common frustration and Facebook. And a common frustration is the posting of false stories. And we've long wished for, why isn't there an automatic Snopesing? One publishes it. Before you publish it, you have to get it Snopes tested. Well, Google has this thing they started called the first draft, and they've now expanded their partner network, bring over 30 news organizations, including the Times, the Post, and BuzzFeed.
The Post, Washington Post,
yes.
not the New York Times.
Yeah. Those committed. Well, I was going to say, depending on your...
No,
I won't go there. Right, no editorial statement.
Right.
But basically, best verifying news stories and how do you stop the spread of false ones. That to me, I will make a neutral political statement, and much of our dialogue on both sides of the spectrum is fueled by repeating falsehoods. And it's just harming the national discussion.
Well, look, I did a TEDx talk. I talked about 3 essential skills for the 21st century. The first skill was something. Is it true? And in a digital age, it's really hard. It could be opinion, it could be doctor, just total fabrication.
And Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of my heroes of all things, has pointed out, we can argue interpretation, we can argue opinion, we can't argue the facts. The facts are, and if we're not operating off a common fact base, it's somehow not surprising that we can't come to any kind of consensus. I'll get off my political high horse, but I think the spread of false information, it's a really fabulous thing, and I think it's a great initiative. And I'll jump into a pet peeve now. We'll come back to those, but my pet peeve: Google trending topics. Facebook trending topics. If you remember all the fear that the overblown fear about Facebook and its politically oriented trending topics feeds, that was largely disproven. But Facebook decided, it's like, okay, I can understand where there might be a problem here, algorithmically driven things. And the algorithms, I don't know about your trending topics feed, mine there's a wonderful combination of useless, uninteresting, care about, and wrong. Absent from that list is relevant and interesting. You know, some there seemingly purely by accident. You know, but Facebook is pointing out the challenges of doing this in an algorithmic fashion, or the bad algorithm. Boy, what a waste of screen real estate on my screen.
All right, we'll get
I
back.
sound cranky. I mean,
it's like it's the whole national life going on right now.
It's also, you know, you and I share 4 days until pitchers and catchers report.
Yes.
You know, the Mets season is over. It's largely
I
over.
I think they're mathematically.
Yeah. Patriots to go.
All right, how is it that this guy can be out, no practice, nothing, and he comes in and does better than any other quarterback?
Well, actually, I think his skills, his contributions, grossly overrated. The guys had a little more skill than you and me, and they went 3-1. You know, these guys look like Tom Brady. You know,
came in and played.
Yeah, and we had the guy, he was the HC of the NYJ.
I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah,
well, that's 15 minutes. That's about all it was, right?
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. Let's get another topics to discuss is Twitter. And I'm a big fan. We've talked about on the show how Twitter doesn't know really what business they're in.
Although, you know, it's real clear what this is what I don't get, you know, and about this because of all the things, you know, Twitter's now getting into streaming things live. Don't they understand, you know, what's been one of the big moves in the last decade? The second screen. We're in a multiple screen environment, and Twitter thinks the answer to its problem is solution.
Right.
No.
That's great. Because Twitter is the king of the second screen. Because
yes.
that's how I'm carrying while something's going on. I tweet during sports events. I tweet during the Oscars. I tweet during
and it's a
debates.
miserable experience for the most part. We make it work because we've got hashtags and lists. Using all of our considerable experience in Twitter, I'm nearing my 40,000th tweet. Considerable experience. It's still a bad experience for me. Why haven't they figured out a great second screen experience? There's so many things that could be done. Bringing in relevant people,
because they're trying to do it all by themselves, as opposed to trying, engaging their ecosystem and letting try to figure out a way to.
If only that were the excuse, I might. You know, that's bad enough and damning enough as it is. You're right. Open up but they could do this themselves. I'm not talking about the most sophisticated, you know, piece of software ever written. I remember, it's got to be 5-6 years ago, I was using this companion piece of software for The Big Bang Theory. I believe that was the TV show. They had their own app, and what it did while you were watching the show, if in fact you had actually time shifted it,
right,
it brought in relevant content, time shifted to when, you know, not that it was live, but it was relevant content, time shifted, including the community discussion so that you could participate in things in a real way. And they were starting to say, what would it look like that made for a good second screen experience live or in a time shifted fashion? Facebook's got massive opportunities in that regard, and what are they doing? They're spending zillions on the NFL trying to have a first screen experience. I almost say
spot on. That's spot on.
Yeah. Go ahead and let Salesforce buy them. You know,
well, that's the way. Look, I have to conversation because it's too close to my space. But what do you think about Salesforce and Twitter.
What do I think about Salesforce and Twitter? Well, you know, Twitter's perspective, if they really need an acquirer and everybody else is bowed out, you know, they're standing at the altar waiting for someone. Left at the altar, they wanted to buy LinkedIn, you know, something that made some amount of sense for what they were doing. Yeah, you know, but they have several issues. You know, one of them is a company where stock performance is so important to, you know, an important part of the compensation of the people there. They need to show growth. They need to do something. You look around, what's there, you know, and
Twitter and LinkedIn are apples and oranges. It's not.
Oh, they're not even, you know, the trees, or, you know, and they're not even the same category, you know.
Right.
Enterprise.
Eat a lot of
yeah, I mean, this one, apparently, Salesforce's investors, for the most part, agree with that characterization, that they don't understand it either, and you know, are saying no. And I think it leaves Twitter vulnerable, but maybe comes into play the person who should really buy it. You know, and the two people I'd say, one, Google makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense for Google, you know, who's failed at largely social initiatives, is infrastructure player, and, you know, monetizing infrastructure is always a challenge. You know, all of that kind of stuff makes sense for them. Maybe Verizon. Yeah, it looks like they have an extra $1 billion to spend.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, and I'm making reference to you know, Verizon's plans to purchase Yahoo.
They're looking for an excuse to get out of that deal.
Oh, they are. You know, one, 500 million names got stolen, and two, they were complicit with the government in scanning emails. You know, and and I'm not privy to the rumor. Read the ones that make it out to the public, which is usually of interest, but the people who are out there rumoring either Verizon wants to walk away from the deal, or at least they're trying to knock off $1 billion, you know, 20–25% of the purchase, because Yahoo is their damaged goods. You know, but the bottom line, you know, it's so frustrating, because, you know, we love the platform and derive such value out of it and see promise. It just blows my mind that they haven't figured that one out.
And you've said it, show how many times they have the worst experience of any piece of software.
Maybe the second worst. I would remind, you know, in a discussion on somebody's Facebook in the last week or so, DBase.
God.
Yeah, an old base software program going back to the 80s, you know, before even Windows. You know, those of you old enough, Microsoft MS-DOS, the operating system prompt was the drive letters. So colon,
greater than.
Yeah, greater than. And somewhere somebody looked and said, that's too complicated. so the user interface, you started the program and it came up with a dot. Yeah, in the type, the dot.
At least you a manual.
Yeah, which we had to read. But the bottom line is, yeah, you know, Twitter's out-of-box experience.
All right, let's get some quick bites, because some of these are really cool. First, we have to do, just like they do with the tone, we have to talk about the dearly departed.
This was a bad month.
Yeah.
We lost a couple of things. BlackBerry out of the hardware business. You know.
It's like they've been dead for 10 years. They finally get them.
Yes, yeah, and you're right. they were in business, but their customers were nowhere. Yeah. But BlackBerry, that the smartphone market, and of people who still have oversized thumbs.
My old partner at Informatics Marketing still uses his BlackBerry. It's very funny. Not switch.
Yeah. Well, I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if he lives that long. Not that yeah. I hope he, for your sake, stays around a while. Meerkat. Meerkat is in the category of but
I just happened to the app on my phone.
You're back. Boy, that post-election apocalypse occurred sooner than I thought. Yeah, the Russians are happy. Yeah. This was the next great thing. We were to broadcast everything, and two things happened. One, broadcasting everything live, and he who lives by partner died a partner. This is an example of Twitter not partnering well. Something that's a natural extension of what it's doing, and there are probably elements of both. This certainly comes in the depth of Meerkat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The Meerkat founders are interestingly spinning this in a fascinating way. They're basically saying, even before we died, we knew broadcast had limitations because it's not something people do every. I think they confuse creation with consumption. But they're saying broadcast wasn't a daily habit, and they're now going, let's up to 8 people simultaneously.
And just hang out. The concept is you just start it and you just hang out, and it's just a bunch of people because basically just hanging out with each other.
Yeah, and then I'm reminded of the movie Something About Mary, where what's his name? One of the characters says 7-minute abs. This was 6-minute abs. That people want to buy that instead. It's like, okay, we've got things that can do 4 users or a number of users. We'll do 8 users. That's that they've already got 1 million signups. And in years gone by, that would have been a really impressive number.
A million ain't what it used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of no longer number 1, Pokemon went.
Pokemon Go. Well, not on.
No.
I mean, it's got some staying power out there, but it's no longer number 1 in the App Store.
Right, but what it did do is it brought attention to what you've always talked about as the most important aspect. It's not virtual reality, it's augmented reality.
Yes.
We talked about that here as well.
Yeah, the other thing, though, I think is interesting about it is people are now in classic fashion because it's no longer number 1 writing off augmented reality. I saw something, Sarah Lacey, last night where people are basically saying, what happened to the year of AR and VR? And, number 1, that, things don't go in straight exponential lines. I mean, my Gartner days, we go into the peak of inflated expectations where this is going to solve everything. Then we go over to the top into the trough of disillusionment. They throw out the baby with the bathwater and say, I guess we were wrong. It's going to do nothing. And then we emerged from the plateau of enlightenment. And I was reminded of the year of the lamb. Starting in the 80s, everybody was proclaiming, this is the year of the lamb, this is the year of the lamb. The year of the lamb never happened, but we were all network connected. You know, and I think there are similar dynamics. We're never going to have a year of, but 5-7 years from now, we're going to look back and say, how did we live without that? You know, that's redefined our experience.
To some of our regular features, I want to talk about security, because we brought it up a little bit. We said we'd come back to it. You know, the fact that it's basically putting an access point to your everything everywhere. So it shouldn't be
an afterthought.
So instead of being the IoT, it should be the Internet of Security Threats.
Yes.
I always coined that.
And it's a good one. And when you look at what those security threats include, they're from the ish. You know, we had something where FBI Director Comey said, cover your webcam camera with tape. Know who's going to be camera and looking at you, you know, for prurient or nefarious purposes. You know, because we don't protect those kinds of things. And now that we're putting cameras in everything, phones, watches, the next generation, Google device, so on.
That commercial I've seen a million times for that camera you put on your door so you can see if somebody's ringing it.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God, please stop.
Yeah. And are more risky than that. So for instance, they were discovered and fortunately quickly patched a Tesla hack. You know, researchers did a bunch of things, you know, as it was described, deadly. So they could open the sunroof and trigger lights and move the tree back and forth. They could unlock the car door without the key. You know. Then there are things they did while the car was moving. They were able to open the trunk so you couldn't see what's going on, control your windshield wipers, and then worst of all, they could trigger the brakes. You know, and they had a demo of a video, you know, where they did it from 12 miles away. They triggered the brakes on a car.
Well, anything that's going to be automated on a car can, because you automate the brake because you want the car to.
We've got drive-by-wire systems.
Right.
What used to be mechanical linkages in cars, in planes, you know, the Dreamliner, they were all drive-by-wire. Everything's electronically impulse, and if you've got the ability to get into the system, and you know these systems have ways in and you know all sorts of fascinating backdoor things. I've got one of these things, little car geeky. There's this thing on your car called the OBD2 port. It's onboard diagnostics. The OBD2 is a standardized interface where when you go into a garage for whatever they need to test, the OBD2 port, you can do all sorts of things, reading the parameters, of your car, and interestingly, writing them. Well, I've got also, I'm a car geek. I've got all sorts of neat stuff. I plug something into my OBD2 port. It's basically a Bluetooth connector so that I can connect to the OBD, can read and modify parameters on my car. I've now, yeah.
It used to be you hacked your car with a wrench.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Timing lights. I go back. The timing belts and stuff like that. No, now electronic, and we're building connectors into the car. That nobody ever thought. I'm sure when they put the OBD2 port in, our government in its infinite wisdom said, yeah, the only people who will be able to stick a cable into it while they're in the garage, never, Bluetooth may not have even been invented when the OBT2, spec was created. Things, and all of a sudden it's like, ooh, we've got read-write access to the vehicle with no security layer between it.
All right, let's get a pet peeve, a kudo, and a quote.
Yeah, one pet peeve that I wanted that was listed under quick bites.
Okay.
HP. Copy protected ink. All of us who have railed about the price of ink, which is really crazy. Many of you, when your printer runs out of ink, it is no more expensive to buy a new printer than it is to buy replacement ink. HP, a significant portion of its profit for many years came from selling ink. There arose a market for people selling HP-compatible ink. So HP has decided in its infinite wisdom, its devices. So now, this is an interesting challenge in and of itself, and I would say this, with knowledge of forethought, you nonetheless decided to buy an HP printer. Okay, that's a viable business strategy. But what HP is doing is going back and retroactively upgrading the firmware in printers. So if you bought it with the expectation you'd be able to ink no longer.
Dell came out with their own OEM branded printers, and they would give them away free. But the only place you could buy Dell ink was from Dell.
Right.
And that didn't work out.
No. and Keurig is dealing with this issue, with copy protected.
I have an older version of the Keurig that does not have the
and I have read it somewhere, and I haven't noticed larger discussion of it. They seem to have backed off that. But this is one of those things in an I/O world. There are all sorts of ownership and modification and property rights. One of my always been John Deere. If you actually buy a John Deere tractor, if you read the contractual paper that you're signing, you don't own the vehicle. They are granting you a perpetual license to it, and blah blah blah. But if you actually modify your car, that if it's all done by computer, buy a lower version of the car, and if I want, greater horsepower, greater compression. Right now, what I do is either buy a chip.
You should be able to buy it when you want to. So you use it. I want to upgrade for the, for this 3 hours.
Yes, but all of that stuff is possible and coming.
That's
cool. But all these devices want to make it so that that's their revenue stream, rather than opening it up to third parties. Where have we heard this one before? Do the Twitter strategy. You want a robust third-party network and figure out how to share revenue.
Platform and ecosystem.
Yes.
A kudo and a kudo. We always complain about things. We have to give a kudo.
Yeah. So my kudo and favorite app this month is Spot Hero. It is a parking app for many major cities. I use it in New York, and it has a couple of options. Number one is cheaper pricing, cheaper than what you could get. Number two, and this is a big differentiator I've used, you get a reservation. So that not only are you getting a cheap price, you're getting a reservation.
Guaranteed spot. I don't know how many times you walk up, you drive up and like, no, we're full.
Yeah, yeah. Now, the challenge of said, there's some complexities around timing and things like that. And I had a couple of things where I made mistakes. People, in one instance, the challenge was an issue I had with the garage. And the Spot Hero people said, do what you need to do, we'll take care of it. And the other was a stupid mistake, booking a parking reservation for the wrong day. it was a non-refundable commitment, and it's like, oops. So I went and booked it for the right day and said, I made a mistake. What can we see? You booked one for the proper day, so we.
That's customer experience.
Exactly.
It's not just customer service.
Yes. And they've got a loyal customer. I've deleted all other parking apps. If you're looking for a reference link so we both get free money with them, I'll be happy to tweet it out after the show.
Look up hashtag PM Disrupt.
Yes.
All right. Let's get to a quote.
There are several, election themed, so, we had an invocation of Honest Abe in the debate. My favorite is, the problem with quotes on the internet is you can never be certain they're authentic.
Abraham Lincoln.
Yes. The man exhibited great forethought.
Yes.
The converse of Abe Lincoln, Andy Borowitz. Yeah. Give a man a fish, he will eat for a day. Give a man Twitter, and he'll forget to eat and starve to death. Yeah. Although I think we're both living examples.
I am not starving to death.
Yeah.
It's clear.
But the other thing, and I've had a discussion in the general theme of just because you can automate something doesn't mean you should.
Yes.
A computer science professor at Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania, where, interestingly enough, I have signed up for election day duty to hopefully help get people to the polls. But talking about voting machines, she observed, I and many 12-year-olds can write a program that would print one thing on the screen and a different thing in the ballot cartridge. That we've put in place a system to fail all sorts of things about system design, auditability, verifiability, and I fear that this election, and we've certainly got one candidate raising the specter of election fraud, but our electronic voting systems are being designed in such a fashion. Sounds good. Who could argue against just going in and tapping a screen and it records your vote? The only people who like things like that are program and don't design systems, because we know how fallible those things are, and a system that will run.
The only secure system is one that's not plugged in.
Yes, and even then, I mean, that doesn't solve the problem here. We don't have something that's auditable or verifiable. I hate to say it, with the memory of hanging chads still in our mind, we need to find some mechanism that enables us to verify if necessary, and electronic voting machines are just sounding like one of the presidential, a huge disaster.
Well,
believe me.
All right, so we started with fiery and we ended with scary. Thank you for joining us for part of my disruption. I'm Alan Berkson, Disruptive, Jonathan Yarmis. We're here the second Friday of every month. Our next show will be all things, if we're still here, if the country still exists, we'll be here on November 11th. We'll be here on Friday, November 11th, and we'll see you next time.